Welcome back, everyone, to the channel. If you're new, I'm glad you've joined us today for a deep dive into one of the most mysterious and heartbreaking cases in modern history, the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. Whether you're a returning viewer or joining us for the first time, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so we can continue bringing you more gripping true crime stories. Your engagement helps raise awareness and keeps these stories alive. Now let's get started. This case, made famous worldwide, has captivated the minds of millions, sparking debates, theories, and most importantly, questions. It's a case that involves a missing child, an international investigation, and a family torn apart by a mystery that refuses to be solved. But what if there's more to this story than we know? What if the truth has been hidden in plain sight all along? Let's rewind to the evening of May 3rd, 2007, in the idyllic resort town of Praia da Luz, Portugal. The McCann family, a typical British family on vacation, sat down to dinner, but this ordinary night would turn into a nightmare that would haunt them forever. Madeleine McCann, just 3 years old, was staying in a ground-floor apartment with her younger twin siblings, Sean and Amelie. Her parents, Jerry and Kate McCann, and a group of friends dined at a nearby tapas restaurant within the resort, a short walk from their apartment. It was a routine evening for the McCanns, who were staying in the Ocean Club Resort, a popular family destination. The children were asleep, and everything seemed calm, but it was a calm that would shatter in an instant. Around 10 p.m., Kate McCann went to check on her children. It was a habit of hers, checking in on the kids throughout the evening to make sure they were safe and sound. But when she opened the door to the room where Madeleine was sleeping, her heart stopped. Madeleine was gone. The bed was empty, the window was open, and the only sign that someone had been there was the missing child's soft toy, left behind, undisturbed. Kate rushed out into the night, calling for her daughter, but there was no sign of her anywhere. Panic set in quickly. What happened next would set off an international search, but would also lead to an investigation fraught with errors, inconsistencies, and tragically very few answers. Kate and Jerry McCann immediately alerted the other members of their group and began searching the resort. Within minutes, they contacted the local authorities. The police arrived quickly, and the search for Madeleine began. But the immediate response raised eyebrows. Why had the resort staff failed to immediately secure the area? Why had the apartment not been properly searched from the start? Was it a case of negligence? And if so, who was responsible? The Portuguese police initially treated the case as a possible abduction. A child had vanished, and there was no sign of forced entry, no ransom note, and no clues to explain her disappearance. But soon, a series of missteps began to complicate the investigation. The focus shifted quickly from the search for Madeleine to an investigation into her parents themselves. This shift was not based on evidence but on suspicion, and it led to McCann's being publicly named as suspects in the case. The McCanns, two well-educated and respectable doctors, found themselves thrust into a media frenzy. The Portuguese police's decision to name them as suspects, referred to as arguidos, was met with backlash and disbelief. Were McCanns somehow involved in the disappearance of their own daughter? The idea was absurd to many, but the media pounced on the narrative, feeding the public's curiosity and skepticism. As the investigation dragged on, the media's portrayal of the McCanns shifted from concerned parents to potential perpetrators. This twist was just the beginning of a case that would defy resolution for over a decade. In the early days, the police, though well-meaning, lacked the resources and experience to conduct a proper investigation. The case quickly became one of the most heavily scrutinized and widely reported missing persons cases in history, with various theories emerging almost immediately. Some speculated that Madeleine had been abducted by a local predator, while others suggested that she had simply wandered off and met a tragic end. The most widely discussed theory was the idea that Madeleine was taken by a child trafficking ring. Despite all these theories, no clear evidence emerged to support any of them. The police came up empty-handed, and as days turned into weeks, the pressure on the investigation mounted. But what if the truth was far more elusive than anyone realized? What if the investigation itself had been mishandled from the very beginning? While the world watched, Madeleine's family was left devastated, grappling with the emotional toll of the situation. The McCanns clung to hope, knowing their daughter was out there somewhere, and that they had to keep searching for answers. Their ordeal was only just beginning, and they would face not only the heartbreak of their daughter's disappearance, but also the scrutiny of a public that was quick to judge. But amid the chaos, there were critical details that were overlooked, moments where the investigation could have turned in a different direction, yet it didn't. What was the real story behind Madeleine's disappearance? Why had the police failed to follow up on some of the most promising leads? Was it incompetence, or was there something more sinister at play? Stay with us as we delve deeper into the investigation, the theories, and the untold truths behind the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated on this ongoing case. Your support helps us continue to uncover hidden truths in cases like this, and we need your engagement more than ever. Now, let's continue where we left off. As the hours turned into days, the police worked tirelessly to piece together what had happened to Madeleine. But from the very beginning, things were not going as they should. The Portuguese police, though well-meaning, were unprepared for the scale of the case. The small town of Praia da Luz had never seen anything like this before, and the lack of experience handling such a high-profile missing child case quickly became evident. One of the most significant issues in the early stages of the investigation was the delay in securing the crime scene. By the time the police arrived at the McCann apartment, the area had already been disturbed. In the frantic search for Madeleine, the McCanns and their friends had walked through the apartment, unknowingly contaminating the potential evidence. No immediate forensic investigation was conducted, which meant that crucial traces, such as fingerprints, fibers, or hair, may have been lost forever. Adding to the confusion was the Portuguese police's initial reluctance to treat the case as a possible abduction. Despite the lack of evidence suggesting any other explanation, the police were slow to act. They seemed to focus on the idea that Madeleine might have wandered off on her own, an unlikely theory given the circumstances. Things took an unexpected turn in September 2007, when the Portuguese authorities named Kate and Jerry McCann as official suspects, arguidos in Portuguese legal terminology, despite there being no concrete evidence linking them to their daughter's disappearance. The police's decision to focus on the parents was shocking and fueled by a series of questionable assumptions. The McCanns, who were both doctors, were initially blamed for leaving their children alone in the apartment, despite the fact that they had been just a few meters away and checked on the children frequently during the evening. The decision to label them as suspects created a media firestorm. The McCanns' every move was tracked by journalists who speculated about their involvement in Madeleine's disappearance. It was a classic case of trial by media. The McCanns became the focus of a media witch hunt, with tabloids across the world publishing sensational headlines about their potential involvement in their daughter's disappearance. This relentless coverage only added to the couple's suffering as they dealt with the unbearable grief of having their child missing while being scrutinized and blamed for her disappearance. The media circus surrounding the McCanns only compounded the difficulties they faced in the investigation. How could anyone reasonably hope to conduct a thorough investigation with such overwhelming pressure from the public eye? And was there a hidden agenda behind the police's decision to focus on the parents? Despite the mounting challenges, the search for Madeleine intensified. Authorities across Europe, including the British police, joined forces with the Portuguese police to try to uncover new leads. The case garnered global attention, with millions of people following the story in the media. Fundraisers were launched, and celebrities joined the McCanns in raising awareness for Madeleine's disappearance. Several theories emerged during the early days of the investigation. One prominent theory was that Madeleine had been abducted by a stranger, possibly for trafficking. This theory was bolstered by reports of a man seen near the McCanns' apartment around the time Madeleine went missing. However, no concrete evidence linked this man to the crime. The abduction theory was further fueled by reports of other children going missing in similar circumstances in other countries, suggesting a potential link to organized crime. But despite this growing theory, no clear leads emerged. Another theory that gained traction was that Madeleine had been accidentally harmed while at the apartment, and the McCanns had covered it up. But this theory, too, was based on speculation and never supported by any concrete evidence. By 2011, for years after Madeleine's disappearance, the case seemed to be at a standstill. The Portuguese police officially closed their investigation, citing a lack of evidence. However, the British authorities refused to let the case go cold. In 2011, Scotland Yard launched Operation Grange, a new investigation into the disappearance, aimed at bringing new insights and resources to the case. Operation Grange's efforts have been far-reaching. Investigators pursued several new leads, including re-examining witness testimonies, reviewing previously collected evidence, and following up on tips from the public. They also launched a thorough re-examination of the possible suspects, including individuals who had been previously overlooked. However, after years of investigation, Scotland Yard announced in 2019 that they were no closer to solving the case. Despite new leads, the investigation was at a standstill. Yet, the hope for a resolution remained. The McCanns, who had never stopped fighting for their daughter, continued to press for answers. They had gone through an emotional roller coaster of hope and despair, and despite the setbacks, they continued to believe that Madeleine would one day be found. As of now, the case remains unsolved, but many theories still exist about what happened to Madeleine McCann. Some believe that she was taken by a stranger, possibly for trafficking, while others suggest that she may have been harmed in the apartment, either accidentally or intentionally, and that the truth has been hidden. Another theory suggests that someone close to the McCann family may have been involved in her disappearance, possibly as a result of a personal dispute. There are even theories that the McCanns themselves were inadvertently involved in a cover-up, though there's no solid evidence to support this. In any case, what remains undeniable is the sheer complexity of the investigation and the tragic uncertainty surrounding Madeleine's fate. What happened to the little girl who went missing one night in Praia da Luz? Was she abducted by a stranger, or did something much darker occur in the apartment? Why has this case remained unsolved for so long, despite the global attention it's garnered? The truth about what happened to Madeleine may still be hidden in the shadows, but the search for justice is far from finished. If you have any information or insights, don't hesitate to reach out. Every little clue could be the key to solving the mystery. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. We want to hear your thoughts. What do you think happened to Madeleine McCann? Join the conversation and keep this case alive. One of the most widely discussed and haunting theories surrounding Madeleine's disappearance is the possibility that she was abducted by a stranger. The theory of abduction took hold early on, and with good reason. Madeleine was last seen in her bed, asleep, with her twin siblings Sean and Amelie just a room away. The window in her bedroom was open, and there were signs that the door had been tampered with. The absence of any evidence of a break-in or forced entry led authorities to believe that a person could have slipped in and taken her. But who and why? In the days following her disappearance, the police began to focus their investigation on local suspects and potential criminals in the area. A key piece of evidence was a report from an eyewitness who had seen a man carrying a child near the resort on the night of May 3rd, 2007. Could this person have been the abductor? The sketch of the man was circulated widely, but no one ever came forward to confirm the sighting, and the man was never identified. Yet, it wasn't just an abduction by a random stranger. The possibility of Madeleine being abducted by a criminal gang, perhaps for child trafficking, became a point of suspicion. There were reports of similar disappearances in Europe, leading some to believe that Madeleine's case might have been part of a much larger, coordinated effort by criminal organizations to exploit vulnerable children. This theory only deepened the mystery, as it seemed to fit with the narrative of Madeleine being taken away for some dark and profitable purpose. But if this theory were true, why hasn't the case ever led to a breakthrough? Why hasn't any criminal network been found, especially with the extensive media attention the case has garnered? After years of investigation, law enforcement still had no concrete leads, and no such abduction ring was ever discovered. One of the most painful and controversial theories that has surfaced over the years is the idea that Madeleine's parents, Kate and Jerry McCann, might have been involved in her disappearance. This theory emerged largely due to the way the investigation was initially handled and the media's tendency to sensationalize every detail. The McCanns' decision to leave their children in the apartment while they dined at the nearby restaurant became a focal point for many. But let's be clear. While it's important to question every aspect of an investigation, the McCanns were not involved in Madeleine's disappearance. There's been no evidence linking them to any criminal activity, and both parents have consistently maintained their innocence, pleading for anyone with information to come forward. The theory that the McCanns were involved largely stems from the idea that they could have accidentally harmed Madeleine and then staged her disappearance to cover it up. While this may sound outrageous to many, there were some who believed that the family's unusual behavior following the disappearance, such as their public pleas for help and their initial denial of any wrongdoing, could have been an attempt to deflect suspicion. However, this theory was largely discredited after thorough investigations. Both Kate and Jerry McCann passed multiple polygraph tests, and the evidence to support any involvement by them was non-existent. The media's portrayal of McCanns as guilty parties, based on little more than suspicion and public sentiment, has since been criticized for its unfairness and harm to the family. Despite this, the shadow of doubt continues to follow the McCanns, driven by public scrutiny and a media narrative that question their actions. The emotional toll of this must have been immense. While dealing with the horror of their missing daughter, they were also forced to endure being accused by the very media that should have been helping in their search for answers. Perhaps one of the most crucial aspects of this investigation that has remained under-examined for far too long is the potential connection to a man seen near the McCann apartment on the night of Madeleine's disappearance. According to reports, an unknown man was spotted carrying a child near the Ocean Club Resort on the evening of May 3rd, 2007. The eyewitness who saw this man described him as tall and wearing dark clothing, but crucially, the man was carrying a child who was described as a little girl. Was this Madeleine? And if so, why hasn't this man ever been located or identified? In the aftermath of the disappearance, investigators worked to track down the mysterious man. There were several leads, but nothing concrete ever came from them. The fact that this man was never identified has raised concerns that a potential key lead was simply overlooked or mishandled. The theory that someone within the resort or local community could have been involved in Madeleine's disappearance is one that continues to linger, particularly when considering the man who was seen so close to the scene. Could this individual have known more than he let on, or was he perhaps involved in Madeleine's disappearance in some way? The lack of answers to this question leaves a dark hole in the case, one that remains as unresolved as the rest of the investigation. The media played a significant role in shaping public perception of the McCanns and the case. The relentless press coverage, particularly in the UK, created an atmosphere of sensationalism. While many journalists and reporters worked to find the truth, there were others who fanned the flames of doubt, painting the McCanns in a negative light from the start. The constant media attention led to a toxic environment where theories, some wild and baseless, flourished. Was the media's involvement in the case, which started as an effort to raise awareness, actually harming the investigation by spreading misinformation? Could a clearer path to the truth have been found if the case had been handled with more tact and fewer assumptions? As the case progressed, the media's obsession with the McCanns' personal lives became a distraction. Instead of focusing purely on Madeleine's disappearance, the public was bombarded with private details of the family's relationships, their previous history, and their actions in the aftermath. This only fueled the public's suspicion and made the search for Madeleine even more difficult. As we look back on the investigation and the many theories that have been proposed, one thing remains certain. The fight for justice is far from over. The McCanns continue to search for answers, and while the police investigation has gone cold in many ways, the case is far from forgotten. Madeleine McCann's disappearance remains one of the most high-profile missing person cases in the world. While the police investigation continues to search for new leads and potential breakthroughs, it's clear that the case still holds secrets. Secrets that may never come to light. But there is still hope. The McCann family has never given up. They continue to push for new developments, new leads, and a renewed focus on finding their daughter. Madeleine is still out there somewhere, and her family's fight for justice and truth remains unwavering. If you have any information related to the case, or if you've seen something that could help solve this mystery, please don't hesitate to come forward. Together, we can help bring Madeleine McCann home. Thank you for joining us in this continued search for answers. If you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated on this case and others. Your support helps keep the fight for justice alive. Stay tuned as we take a deeper look at the global impact of this case and the ongoing search for Madeleine McCann. Over a decade has passed since Madeleine McCann disappeared from her family's holiday apartment in Praia da Luz, yet there has been no resolution in the case. Despite the best efforts of law enforcement and private investigators, no one has been able to conclusively explain what happened to the 3-year-old girl. In the years that followed, the case remained in the public eye, but with every failed lead and unsolved mystery, the pain for Madeleine's family deepened. As the years stretched on, the McCanns became determined to keep Madeleine's case alive. They refused to allow their daughter to become just another statistic, to be forgotten like so many other missing persons cases that faded from the headlines. In their hearts, they believed that Madeleine was still out there, and they continued their fight for justice. In 2013, Madeleine's parents set up a campaign to raise awareness, calling for the reopening of the investigation and pushing the authorities to continue searching for new leads. Their relentless efforts eventually led to the British police becoming involved once again with a fresh investigation, Operation Grange, launched by Scotland Yard. However, after years of effort, this investigation, too, came to a disappointing standstill. In 2020, after several high-profile developments in the case, the UK police admitted that they had no significant new evidence linking anyone to Madeleine's abduction. While the McCanns continue to push for more attention to the case, the long absence of any fresh information has left many questioning if they will ever get closure. One of the most haunting aspects of the Madeleine McCann case is the ever-evolving list of suspects. Over the years, several people have been linked to the disappearance, but the lack of concrete evidence has made it impossible to conclusively determine who, if anyone, is responsible for her abduction. In 2020, a major development in the case came when German prosecutors identified a man named Christian Bruckner, a convicted sex offender, as a potential suspect. Bruckner had lived in the Algarve region of Portugal around the time of Madeleine's disappearance. He had a history of criminal behavior, and his past included convictions for sexual offenses. Investigators were able to link him to the area, and they also found that he had been in possession of items that seemed suspiciously connected to the case. Yet, despite the spotlight on Bruckner, there is still no definitive proof that he was involved in Madeleine's disappearance. The German authorities have openly stated that while they have significant evidence linking him to the area, there is still no concrete proof that he abducted Madeleine. For McCanns, this news brought a glimmer of hope, but it also opened up more questions. Why was Bruckner in the area? Did he know something about the case that others didn't? Could he hold the key to finally solving the case? But Bruckner, like many other suspects in the case, remains uncharged. The uncertainty surrounding his involvement only adds to the frustration of the McCanns and the public. If this man is truly responsible for Madeleine's disappearance, why has he not been brought to justice? Throughout the years, there have been several claims from individuals who believe they have seen Madeleine alive. These sightings have stirred hope among the McCanns and the public, but none of them have led to any breakthroughs. From the very first day of her disappearance, people across the world have reported seeing a girl resembling Madeleine, but none of these reports have been substantiated. In 2019, a report emerged from a woman who claimed to have seen Madeleine in a Portuguese supermarket with a man she described as looking suspicious. The woman, who was an employee at the store at the time, said that the girl she saw resembled the missing child. This led to renewed interest in the case, as the possibility that Madeleine was still alive resurfaced. But like many of the previous reports, this sighting turned out to be another dead end. The emotional toll these false sightings have had on the McCanns is immeasurable. Each time a new report surfaces, the family's hopes are lifted only to be dashed once more. How many more years will they have to endure this uncertainty? And why do these false sightings continue to crop up when there are still so many unanswered questions about the actual case? One of the most heartbreaking and frustrating elements of this case is the simple fact that Madeleine McCann has never been found. For years, people have speculated that she was abducted by a stranger, that she was taken by a criminal gang, or that she was harmed by someone close to her family. Yet, despite the theories, the search, and the media attention, there's been no evidence that conclusively answers a question. What happened to Madeleine? Every lead has turned into a dead end. Every suspect has remained a mystery, and every new theory has added complexity to an already complicated case. What are we missing? What piece of the puzzle has been overlooked? The answers seem to slip further and further away, and for McCanns, the agony of not knowing what happened to their daughter continues to haunt them. As of now, the investigation remains open, but the lack of concrete evidence and the passage of time have made it increasingly difficult to make any real progress. The McCanns' desire for closure is unrelenting, but with each passing year, it feels like that closure is slipping further out of reach. Despite the emotional toll of the investigation and the challenges they have faced, the McCanns remain hopeful. They continue to work with law enforcement, pushing for any and all new leads that might bring them closer to the truth. They know that the search for Madeleine is not just about finding their daughter. It's about ensuring that justice is served. The McCanns' campaign for justice is far from over. They have called for renewed investigations, and their tireless efforts to raise awareness about their daughter's disappearance continue to this day. With the support of the public, they remain hopeful that the truth will eventually come to light. Madeleine's case may be unresolved, but it's not forgotten, and the fight for justice, for closure, and for truth will continue until the world knows what really happened to Madeleine McCann. If you have any information that could help solve this case, please come forward. The McCanns need your help, and the truth needs to be uncovered. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more updates as we continue to follow the case of Madeleine McCann. Your support is crucial in keeping the search alive. Stay tuned as WEL dive deeper into the current status of the investigation and the continued efforts to bring Madeleine home. One of the most significant developments in the Madeleine McCann case came in 2020 when German authorities publicly named a suspect Christian Bruckner. Bruckner, a convicted sex offender, was identified as a person of interest due to his previous convictions and his connection to the Algarve region, where the McCanns were staying in Praia da Luz at the time of Madeleine's disappearance. Bruckner's criminal history includes multiple offenses, some of which involve sexual violence and child exploitation, making him a prime suspect in the case. Additionally, his presence in the region around the time of Madeleine's disappearance and his alleged connection to local areas where Madeleine could have been taken added weight to the theory that he might have been involved in the abduction. However, despite this connection, no solid evidence has emerged to directly link Bruckner to Madeleine's case. In 2020, prosecutors in Germany confirmed that they were investigating Bruckner's possible involvement, but they did not have enough evidence to charge him with the crime. The case has yet to progress beyond suspicion, leaving many questions unanswered. The potential link to Bruckner has reignited hope in McCanns, but has also raised significant doubts. Could this man, whose past includes horrific crimes, really be the one to provide answers? Or is he just another lead in a case filled with dead ends? Despite the lack of a breakthrough, the search for Madeleine has not slowed down. In 2011, the British government launched Operation Grange, a police investigation into the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. Led by the Metropolitan Police, the operation sought to investigate any new leads that could shed light on what happened to the young girl. Operation Grange has been a long-term effort, with British detectives poring over new information re-examining witness statements, and following up on tips. But despite the renewed investigation, there has been little progress. Over the years, the operation has run into multiple roadblocks, including a lack of physical evidence and the difficulty of piecing together a timeline of events. The police have also faced criticism for their handling of resources, with some questioning whether the money and time spent on Operation Grange has been worth it. In 2020, Scotland Yard confirmed that they were open to any new leads in the case, but admitted that their investigation was at a standstill. In many ways, Operation Grange has struggled to make significant headway. While the case remains open, the lack of a clear direction has left many wondering if the truth about what happened to Madeleine will ever be revealed. In every missing persons case, witness testimony is often one of the most valuable pieces of the puzzle. But in the case of Madeleine McCann, the credibility of many of the eyewitness reports has been called into question. Over the years, several people have claimed to have seen Madeleine after she was abducted, but none of these sightings have been substantiated. One of the most intriguing eyewitness accounts came from a woman who claimed to have seen Madeleine in a Portuguese supermarket with a man who looked suspicious. The woman said she saw the child being accompanied by a man, but she did not identify the individual as anyone involved in Madeleine's life. Could this sighting have been a key piece of the puzzle? Or was it just another misidentification in a case filled with false hopes and dead ends? The fact that no solid evidence has emerged from these sightings has only added to confusion. What's more, it raises the question of whether the eyewitness reports have contributed to the problem, further muddying the waters of the investigation. As more theories surface and new leads are pursued, one thing remains certain. The truth about what happened to Madeleine McCann is still out there, waiting to be uncovered. Over the years, the case has seen numerous forensic tests and re-examinations. In 2018, a report revealed that the McCann family had agreed to a re-examination of forensic evidence from the case. This included revisiting old forensic samples and conducting new tests on any items that might have been overlooked. The results of these tests could be crucial in finally unraveling the mystery of Madeleine's disappearance. However, as of now, no major breakthroughs have been reported from these re-examinations. With forensic technology advancing every year, there remains hope that new tests could provide a missing piece of the puzzle. Could these new tests help break the case wide open? Only time will tell. But the ongoing forensic work continues to raise hope that one day, science may be able to answer the questions that have remained unanswered for so long. As the investigation continues, the emotional toll on Madeleine's family remains profound. Kate and Jerry McCann have never stopped searching for their daughter. Despite the many theories, the public pressure, and the years of uncertainty, they have remained steadfast in their belief that Madeleine is still out there. Their campaign for justice has evolved from a desperate plea for answers to a tireless search for the truth. While they continue to fight for closure, the journey has not been easy. The public scrutiny and the ongoing media coverage have caused immense emotional strain. But through it all, the McCanns have remained determined to find their daughter. For Kate and Jerry McCann, the agony of not knowing what happened to their daughter is immeasurable. They've had to endure more than any parent should, and yet their love for Madeleine remains unwavering. Despite the years of searching and a lack of concrete evidence, they refuse to give up. Their hope that Madeleine will one day come home keeps them going, even when the road ahead seems impossible. As we conclude this section of the story, it's clear that the disappearance of Madeleine McCann remains an open wound for both her family and the world at large. The investigation has been long, arduous, and filled with false leads, missteps, and unanswered questions. Yet, despite everything, the case remains unsolved. The pursuit of justice for Madeleine continues, and with every new lead, theory, and development, hope is rekindled. But until the truth is found, the mystery of what happened to Madeleine McCann will remain one of the most haunting and unresolved questions of our time. If you have any information that could help solve this case, please don't hesitate to come forward. Every piece of information matters. Madeleine's family is still searching, and they need your help to find the answers that have eluded them for so long. Before we proceed, please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Your support helps us continue to bring these cases into the spotlight. Let us know your thoughts and feelings on Madeleine's case. Do you believe we're getting closer to truth, or are we still as far away as ever? Now, let's continue with the story. For over 14 years, Kate and Jerry McCann have been on an emotional and relentless journey. They faced unimaginable heartbreak, being thrust into the public eye and under the harsh scrutiny of the media, all while desperately seeking answers about their daughter's disappearance. And through it all, they have never given up. In interviews and public statements, Kate and Jerry have made it clear that they will continue to search for Madeleine for as long as they can. They have been remarkably vocal about their belief that Madeleine is still alive, despite the many obstacles that have stood in their way. Their persistence has been both heart-wrenching and inspiring, with each day bringing new hope that the truth will eventually emerge. Kate, in particular, has been open about the deep psychological toll of the situation. As a mother, losing a child is an unspeakable tragedy, but not knowing what happened to that child is a different kind of torment. Kate has spoken about the emotional roller coaster she has been on, from the initial shock and disbelief of Madeleine's disappearance to the years of searching, hoping, and grieving. Their resilience has been tempered by unimaginable challenges. Not only have they had to deal with the devastation of Madeleine's disappearance, but they've also had to contend with being wrongly accused by the media and some parts of the public. They were named as suspects early on, with no concrete evidence against them, and had to endure public speculation that their daughter's abduction might have been a cover-up for an accident. This unjust media scrutiny further complicated their ability to grieve and move forward. Despite these challenges, Kate and Jerry continue to focus on one thing: finding their daughter. They've been unwavering in their call for the case to remain open and for new developments to be explored. They have maintained that as long as there is even the smallest chance that Madeleine is out there, they will keep fighting for her. The psychological toll on Kate McCann, in particular, has been immense. As a mother, the grief of losing a child is immeasurable, but the agony of not knowing what happened to Madeleine or where she is has taken a different kind of emotional toll. Kate has been remarkably open about her feelings, sharing her anguish with the public through interviews and her book, Madeleine. She has written about how each day without Madeleine feels like eternity. Yet, she has also spoken of the strength that comes from the unyielding hope that her daughter will one day come home. One of the most difficult aspects of Kate's journey has been the fact that Madeleine's case has never been solved. There have been so many twists and turns, but no concrete answers. She has said that the absence of closure is like a black hole that pulls at her every day. There is no ending to the story, and for a mother who desperately needs to know what happened to her child, the unknown is an unbearable weight. Despite the crushing toll this case has had on Kate and Jerry, they continue to advocate for their daughter. They continue to fight for justice, for Madeleine, and for all the families going through similar struggles. Through her advocacy, Kate has raised awareness about missing children, hoping that no parent ever has to experience the same torment. The media has played a huge role in shaping public perception of the McCann family and the case. Initially, the coverage was a mixture of sympathy and fascination, with many viewers following the search for Madeleine with hope. However, as the investigation unfolded, the media began to take a darker turn. As we saw earlier, the McCanns were subjected to an unprecedented level of media scrutiny. The British tabloids, in particular, ran sensationalized stories questioning their involvement, publishing scandalous headlines, and even accusing them of harming their daughter. This media frenzy led to McCanns being publicly named suspects, despite a lack of evidence to support these claims. It was a cruel twist in an already devastating case. While the media coverage helped bring attention to Madeleine's disappearance, it also hindered the investigation. Journalists, eager to break a story, often published unverified information that became fodder for public speculation. The McCanns became victims not only of the crime that took their daughter, but also of a media circus that served to distort the truth. For the McCanns, the battle wasn't just about finding their daughter. It was about fighting for their reputation, their dignity, and the truth. But despite the media's harsh treatment, they have never backed down. They remain focused on their daughter's case and on continuing the search. Though the investigation into Madeleine's disappearance continues to struggle for answers, Kate and Jerry McCann are not giving up. Their determination to find out what happened to their daughter remains steadfast, and they continue to push for new leads, new investigations, and new forensic tests. They have called for a deeper examination of the evidence that has been collected over the years, and for the case to be reopened if new information arises. As of now, the case is still open, but the future remains uncertain. The McCanns are hopeful that a breakthrough could come at any time, whether from new forensic evidence, an anonymous tip, or even a new witness coming forward. They've never stopped believing that Madeleine is out there, waiting to come home. In recent years, the case has garnered renewed attention, thanks in part to the persistence of the McCann family and continued investigative efforts. International media outlets, documentaries, and social media campaigns have kept Madeleine's story alive, ensuring that her disappearance is not forgotten. But despite all the effort, the truth about what happened to Madeleine McCann remains as elusive as ever. The McCanns' fight for justice will continue, but so will the fight for answers. Every day that goes by without Madeleine being found is another day of uncertainty and heartache for her family. But through it all, the McCanns have made it clear they will never stop searching for their daughter. Madeleine's disappearance has had far-reaching consequences. It has reshaped how missing children cases are handled globally, highlighting the importance of thorough investigations and media responsibility. The case has led to greater awareness about child safety and has prompted reforms in how law enforcement agencies handle missing persons cases. Madeleine's story has touched the hearts of millions around the world, but for her family, the fight continues. They refuse to allow their daughter to become just another unsolved case. They know that finding the truth about what happened to her is their only chance for closure, and they will stop at nothing to make that happen. As we conclude this series, the search for Madeleine McCann is far from over. The case remains one of the most haunting mysteries of our time, and it continues to capture the world's attention. While the answers remain elusive, the fight for justice and the hope that Madeleine will one day be found live on. Thank you for joining us on this journey to uncover the truth about Madeleine McCann's disappearance. Please continue to share her story, keep the search alive, and stay tuned for any new updates. Together, we can help bring Madeleine home.